already. So thanks to the magic of T-Mobile 5G magic voodoo
What?
internet, I'm recording from nowhere. Well, maybe not nowhere. Delaware is somewhere, but we've got Nick from
Yeah.
home today, me from the woods. And Nick, today we're going to talk about vetting a good mentor, figuring out
Yeah.
if they know what they're talking about, and how that can make sure to optimize your success in the business.
Yeah, I think that's a solid topic and a thing that more people really need to talk about. Because I don't know, you need to have an idea of what you're looking for from your mentor more than anything before you start working with them. And I think a lot of times people just go out there with the idea that they're going to sign up with whoever's talking a good game online or whoever's called them up and said some exciting things to them over the phone, and that everything's all just going to work out. And I mean, this isn't even Medicare specific, right? Like this could be
Mhm.
anybody. You could get a call from the three-letter IMO that's always calling folks saying that they want you to join their team because they've got somebody who's been selling for all of 10 minutes that is starting to recruit. And or you could join a Facebook group that is run by somebody who is very well respected with good reason, and it still might not work out if they're the person you select for your mentor, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. It's
Yeah.
not just about um it's about you, right? It's about you as the agent. It's not actually about them. Like there's lots of good mentors out there that are going to be a bad fit for you.
I think we just
um
made our first short of the day already.
hey, I like it. Yeah. So uh so that's where we are. Like you want to start by figuring out what it is you want. You want to start by figuring out what you need, and some of that is income related, like, hey, how am I going to get paid? Am I going to be street level? If I'm street level, does that mean I'm giving up training? Um if not giving up training and I'm street level, like, what does that training look like?
Mhm.
Who's doing the actual training? Is it coming in the form of like Dropbox files that I have to read and take care of stuff myself? Is it coming in the form of me having personal conversations with a person? If I'm having like one-on-one training with a person, do I get along with that person? Do I like that person? Do I like the way that person teaches? um there's a lot of stuff that goes on. You spend a lot of time recruiting agents, Chris. Let's toss this into your direction. When you bring on somebody, what are
Mhm.
you looking for? Like from your perspective as the person who's bringing somebody on, what are you looking for?
Yeah, pretty basic stuff, and I guess this is probably it works via Medicare, final expense,
Yeah.
any kind of independent sales. Is if someone says yes, I'd like to work with you. It's not work for you. That's not how this works.
Right.
And you finally move that football from the initial conversation to point of contracting. I send contracting, the easiest company to whatever it is to send. And I expect that person to complete contracting in an appropriate amount of time. 12 hours, 1 hour, 24 hours, not a week later. Like that doesn't show any initiative to really do something. That's kind of
Right.
like that first test. Are they going to do the first thing you give them? And
Yeah.
as Ben Bowman would teach, you only give them a little bit to do at a time. Here's the thing to do it. Here's the thing to do it. Not overwhelm them with 82 carriers, insurance bag, and 52 training sites. Give them a few things and then move the ball forward. So then I say, okay, you've completed contracting. Here is the lead program. Or do you have an outside marketing program that is self sufficient and paying your bills? You probably don't. Let's be honest. Here's the lead program. Here's how it works. Here's how much you pay. Here's how it's going to work. Do they do it? If they don't do it, the odds are in 6 weeks to 6 months, they're long gone. Unfortunately, that's just the truth. If they do it, it's hard, it's expensive, it's a risk, and eventually it works out. And then do they involve themselves in the resources? Like here's your Google Drive, here's your group chat, here's your, the tech to be able to go out there. Did you purchase insurance toolkits to go out there and function? And then do they actually go do it? Do they buy a few age leads? Do they go on a training call? Do they get it in the field? And does something happen? And if you get to like step 5, at that point, they're probably golden. Like, unless their leg falls off, their mother dies, or like real bad things happen that they weren't ready for early on, they're good. And
Right.
from there, you can make $20,000 a month final expense producers, 25 enrollment a month Medicare Advantage producers. Once those pillars are set, they're functional. But it's pushback in the beginning, overthinking, in lack of implementation, lack of like practice, then those don't work out at all.
So, hey, you got people in your background. That's fun. Um, so So for you, like the right type of agent for you is going to be somebody who's a self-starter, probably somebody who has a little bit of experience, somebody who has a very clear idea of what they want out of their career in the insurance industry, and a person who is never worked for themselves before, a person who has just very brand new gotten licensed and is just kind of like, I hear insurance is kind of a good thing, but I don't really even know what type of insurance I want to sell. Um, like I've never worked on my own before. I maybe need to be part of a team that's kind of, pushing me along and is gonna like give me daily check-ins and, make sure that I'm completing all my tasks, and somebody who's gonna kind of be my boss. Because there are people who need that and people who want that, but that's not a right fit for you. And you're an excellent organization. Like I think there are many, many people who would be happy at your organization, but people should recognize that like there's nothing wrong if you look at what Chris just said and you're like, hey man, that actually doesn't fit what I'm looking for in an upline.
Yeah, perfectly
But
fine.
those are the types of questions that you should be asking. You should be trying to get to the bottom of like, that's what Chris's process is. That's how he expects agents to behave. That's what he's looking for from an agent.
Hmm.
And if you feel like that's a good fit for you, he's probably a good guy to work with. But if you don't feel like that's a good fit for you, that's nothing against Chris. That has
No.
nothing to do with Chris. That has to do with you. And that's okay. Go find somebody else. There are groups out there that will say, "Hey, we're going to send you an informational sheet, and all you have to do is fill out your name and your license information. We're going to do all your contracting for you. When it comes time to take AHIP, for example, we are going to give you a study guide. And, if you need to have somebody on the phone with you while you're taking AHIP to answer questions, we will be on the phone with you to help you through AHIP while you answer questions. We are going to send somebody out to sit in the car with you and ride along with you every day for the first month. And make sure that you start selling right away. We are going to have daily check-ins with you for the first 6 months that you're in the business, and then after that, weekly check-ins, and then after that, monthly check-ins. And I mean, honest to God, to me, that sounds horrifying. Like I would never want to work that way. I don't like that kind of micromanagement, but there are people who want that stuff. And it's important to recognize like who you are and what you're looking for and how you want to work. The other thing is, when you're getting trained, and if you're working with Chris, you're getting trained by Chris. Do you like Chris? When you guys have a conversation, do you get along? Like, can you talk about stuff that's not related to insurance? That's, I think, actually important. Like, can you have general conversations?
Hmm.
If you don't like and trust the person who is training you, you are not going to implement their training. You're not. You're
It's
not
just
going to
human
want to.
behavior. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and that's nothing against the person who's training you, and that's nothing against you. Just like that's life. You got to find the right fit. It's like dating. You got to find the right person. You don't want to get married to the first person you go out on a blind date with.
Yeah. There's quite a few people online, and oftentimes we'll joke privately between each other about things they say. And I'm like, that method that they're using to attract talent doesn't connect with me at all.
Yeah.
Like showing off your $25,000 trip between here and there and your $80,000 deposit doesn't connect with me. Like that,
No.
to me, I still work as hard today as I did when I didn't have a dollar. So that ultra rich look at what I have, um, sausage measuring stuff doesn't do anything for me, but
Yeah.
it actually connects with certain kinds of people. I also find that there's people that complain, be it final expense or Medicare, that they never received any type of support training, that independent sales was a failure but they ended up contracting with like a contract warehouse. Like there
Yeah.
really was it. There was a guy making $50,000 a year to contract people. What resulted from that didn't affect his salary. There was nothing besides where to get a devoted contract. And that
Right.
wasn't their fault. That wasn't your fault. It was really just a poor fit for what you needed. So vetting out, do you like the person? Do you like their system? Can you shut up and do what you're told? Is it going to connect right with your personality? Like I got a guy I work with, former paramedic,
Mhm.
lives in Arkansas. Honestly, never met him face to face like a lot of people, but we have a similar enough background that when I said stop selling AI, stop selling this company because it's not a good fit for what you're doing. Hey, and here's my background. We just hit it off.
Right.
So that level of personal familiarity kind of helps you get over rough spots too, where you're having a bad day, you're doing something stupid. You need to be told just to shut up and buy your leads. Like sometimes that really helps in those situations.
I think that's extremely helpful, and especially like so it's very easy. I think you mentioned the contract warehouse thing, and that's really resonates with me. I was very lucky when I started selling final expense. I was in a place where I had time to kind of vet a bunch of different IMOs, and I was coming into the industry at a time when there were a bunch of IMOs that were getting started that were all trying to do things the same way, and that was a little bit of a different way than had traditionally been done before. And I ended up in a really good situation that fit me very well personally right away, first chance out of the gate. For my Medicare contracts, that did not happen. I ended up with a very traditional contract warehouse IMO for Medicare, and it did not work out for me. Like they had no ability to help me get my Medicare business going in such a way that it worked with my final expense business. They just couldn't do it. They couldn't wrap their head around it. Like I had to either be completely selling Medicare 100% full time, or completely selling final expense 100% full time, or selling both 100% full time and like putting in 80 hours a week. That was like those were the only options. Um, and that didn't work for me. And so I went someplace else, and they also had a similar, like, couldn't wrap their head around it, but at least they offered like training. And like, so I went to some seminars, and I did some stuff, and they were a little bit more hands-on. They had a little bit more training, but their training still didn't work for me because they were a big organization. They didn't see me as a person because I was new and I wasn't producing for them yet. Like, and so they didn't really have any time for me. I happen to know for their big producers, they have lots of time, but I was never a big producer for them. They have no time for me. Um, and so that didn't work out. And then I went to another organization. Then I went to another organization until I finally kind of found my own way. But honestly, if I didn't have a very solid final expense career to fall back on, it took me 4 years to kind of figure out how to do Medicare as an independent agent.
Yeah,
You know,
it's challenging to
yeah,
figure out because you may not be able to vet the person right away. You might end up overthinking the process and missing a valid opportunity.
yeah,
But it's also a lot of this is you versus you. Like
yeah,
I can give you the equipment, I can give you the tools, the training, the support, the appropriate carriers, a method to employ. But if you don't employ it, or you don't employ it long enough, or you don't employ it consistently enough, it doesn't matter who you're
yeah,
working with, it isn't going to work.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
I equate a lot of this business to franchises. Like you might run a Chick-fil-A, I might run a McDonald's. I don't really like McDonald's, never sits well with me. You get the point, and you got to figure out what franchise you'd like to open. You have
Right,
to follow the corporate training and set the stove up at the right place and run the register the way they tell you. Otherwise, it's definitely not going to work.
right.
But maybe you find out over the course of time you got your footing with McDonald's, but you really want to open up a small mom and pop coffee shop. You know, you got to have that self starter mentality. You got to be able to run it on your own. Corporate isn't going to come into the restaurant and do it for you all the time. In the end, that it's going to sink or swim based off of you.
Yeah. So having a clear idea of what your goals are, like really, like write them down. Like having a very clear idea of what your goals are is everything. Like knowing how you like to work, what you're trying to accomplish, what the time frame you're trying to accomplish it in is, Like that's huge. Now there are some things to look out for, right? There are some things that you should uh, probably be aware of, right? Red flags.
Give me one.
If you are signing up with somebody and they have been holding an insurance license for less than a year and they're taking you on to work for them,
Hmm.
I am really struggling to come up with a scenario where that's actually a good idea.
Do you see that a lot in Medicare though? Because Medicare hierarchically is very difficult to override versus 82
It
people who
is,
contract
but
for life.
I'm starting. So the thing that's happening in Medicare is people who used to sell final expense are starting to get into the Medicare space. And so you are starting to see that kind of stuff in Medicare.
We were saying a lot of final expense folks, or not a lot, but there's been a shift of some shifting into Medicare and bringing that like multi-level marketing philosophy. Tell me more about that.
So I'm starting to see that. Now, this may all die a very quick death, and they may all shift over to ACA or do something else very soon because the final rule for Medicare is going into effect, where it's a 48-hour scope of appointment again, and most final expense agents can't handle that. That is like the man. People are losing their minds over needing to go back 2 days later to write a Medicare policy. So it is very possible that all of that's going to die a quick death. In which case, the next thing that you should really sort of look out for, and this is actually something that I was told was not a big deal in Medicare when I first started, and I have come to find that I disagree. I was told when I started working in Medicare that even though in final expense it was really important to have somebody who was an experienced salesperson, in Medicare it was more important to have somebody who with really excellent product knowledge, even if they'd never sold a day in their life. And this was received wisdom. You know, this was the common thinking amongst people when I got started in Medicare. And I've worked with people who have never sold Medicare a day in their life, but have excellent product knowledge. And I have worked with people who have sold a lot of Medicare. It's better to get going with somebody who sold a lot of Medicare.
But
It is.
but product knowledge, I feel like maybe I'm misreading the whole thing here. It's such a regional business.
It is.
It's almost not, I don't want to say it, but it might actually be irrelevant. Like the a great story. And I have
Okay.
a guy who works in Jersey, great paying state for Medicare. He goes from Newcastle County in Delaware, great
Hmm.
area, to Cape May County, New Jersey, back closer to his home base.
Hmm.
Literally entirely different palette of carriers. We're like,
Hmm.
where is dual complete? Why can't you click on it? Are you running Sunfire incorrectly? Is this your fault? Is this operator error? It doesn't exist. Like the plan we're looking for literally didn't exist
Right.
right across the Delaware Bay. So how important is product knowledge where the freaking product is different from one county to the next?
Well, so that's why people would say things like, having somebody with excellent product knowledge is actually the most important thing, because there are people out there, and I know this because I've worked with some of them. There are people out there who, if you name a county, almost any county in almost any of the 50 states, they can list off every carrier and every plan in that county off the top of their head. Like, I know these people.
Yeah.
These people exist. And so when you call them up and you say, hey, I'm working in Cape May County, New Jersey, and I need a dual plan, they can say, okay, the best dual plan in Cape May County, New Jersey is blah, blah, blah. I don't know what it is. I don't work in Cape May County, New Jersey. And those people exist. And there are people who that's their only job. And all of these contract warehouses have that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of them have that guy. And so, I mean, exactly to your point, because some of it is so regional. For as long as I can remember, that the received wisdom has been, it means you're selling a product that has no premium most of the time, right? You don't need to learn how to sell this. You're just taking orders. It's not real sales. That's not true. That's
Yeah.
just not true. It's not true anymore. It used to be true. There was a time when it was very easy to sell Medicare Advantage. There was very little competition. The perception was that everybody wanted to talk about Medicare anyway, and there was no real competition because commissions weren't all that high, and blah blah blah. There was a lot of reasons why you didn't need any sales skills.
Not even the truth anymore. Like a
Yeah, it's
first
not the truth anymore.
new to Medicare is like a $50 final expense app.
Yeah, and there is more competition now. And the competition is coming from weird places that are hard for you to defend against. You're getting competition from overseas call centers with people who aren't even necessarily licensed in the United States, that are then like kicking over to a licensed agent for the sale in the last 30 seconds, right? Like there's crazy competition. And more importantly, there's crazy competition for keeping this business on the books. So you need those skills. You need those sales skills. Having somebody who's experienced not only at building a book of business, but retaining a book of business. Somebody who's done it, somebody who's been in the business for a long time and actually has experience both building and maintaining a book of business, I think is a very critical element for most people if you're looking for a Medicare upline. There are very well-known, reasonably well-respected people out there building Medicare teams, creating Medicare IMOs who have lots of knowledge and have almost no sales skills. Finding out how much they've ever sold, finding out how big their book of business is, finding out how well they've retained it, what their plans for retention are. Ask people like, how do you teach people how to retain your book of business? How much you sell is less important than how much you keep. And that's true in everything, but it's like triple true in Medicare. So we are running out of time, and there's actually a lot to say about this. We may want to do another video on this topic.
The good news, though, is I have a hot take for the day. Are you ready for your hot take of today's episode?
I am ready for today's hot take.
So, reason people fail in the business, be it Medicare final expense or insurance sales in general, is they don't want it or they don't need it. Like they don't want it bad enough. They don't have the drive, the determination, the entrepreneurial mindset, or they don't need it. Their spouse makes good enough money. They don't need to make enough money. They're not couponing their way to make it through this week's grocery shopping trip. I've been there, done that. They don't need it or they don't want it enough. Could that be a good enough reason why some people really don't make it in this business?
I think, actually, I think a lot of people who don't need it, it's a hard business to get off the ground on. It is. It is an excellent business long term. There are very, very few jobs where you can make as much money in as short a period of time as you can selling insurance, any kind of insurance, not just Medicare, but especially with Medicare. It is going to be almost 3 years of putting in consistent work before you start to really see the value of this. Unless, even if you're like a superstar, you're not going to start seeing the value of this until you've made it all the way to your first January of your renewals, right? So minimum 1 year if you're putting 300 apps a year up. Most people are not putting 300 apps a year up. The average agent is putting up way less than that. It's going to take 3 years minimum before you really start to see the value of having done Medicare. And it's 3 years of consistent work, not dabbling. Most people will go find something easier to do.
Yeah.
Most people, I'm spending a lot more time on non-Facebook social media platforms these days, talking to people about like general sales. And like I talk to so many commission salespeople who all they're looking for is a base salary, man. They're looking for a 6-figure base salary plus maybe a tiny little commission. Like they're okay if they're making $150,000 a year. They're golden. They don't need more than that. They don't want more than that. If they can get $70,000, $80,000 a year base, make an additional $50,000, $60,000 a year in commissions, they're like super happy. I wouldn't be. Like that's entry level for me. But like that's a lot of people that are out there that are like that, and they should go find those jobs. Like that's okay.
I really think if that's where your baseline is, or if it's even lower than that, this might just be too hard to do. Like
Yeah.
I genuinely ask people sometimes, how much do you need to make it from month to month? Just be honest. Not really
Yeah.
my business, but it is my business. If you want to work with me, I need to make like 2,500. Well, I need you
Yeah.
to spend 2,500 on leads. Like this is going to be hard.
Yeah.
Like
It
you
is.
don't, if you don't need it, are you going to do it on the days you don't want to? If you
Right.
don't want it, are you going to do it on the days you don't feel like doing it? And if you need it and you want it and you don't give up on it, Nick, people can make some pretty stupid money doing what we do, right?
Crazy stupid money. You will make more money. I make more money than anybody that I know in real life. Like I know doctors, I know surgeons. I make more money than anybody I know in real life. I know somebody who sold their tech company. um, like like you can make stupid money doing this. Um, it's a really great job, but like you have to cover an average lead bill, you have to have you have to have 100 people on your books for Medicare to
Mhm.
cover an average annual lead spend. So until you've got 100 people on your books, you're losing money.
You
You're
can do
not breaking even until you get 100 people on your books. And that's for a lot of people, man. Like I know agents that takes that getting 100 people on their book of business takes them multiple years. It
But you can
shouldn't.
do it. You can do it if you want it, you need it, you identify the right person to work with, you
Yeah.
buy into it, you make that level of commitment so you reach that level of stability. And before you know it, you'll say silly things that about this business that other places would never say. I said to
Yeah.
Yola this morning, she's writing Sentinel Security. She's like, really trying to get that Australia trip. I'm like, did you hear yourself? Like, how silly does this actually sound?
Right.
See if I can
Yeah.
qualify for a trip to Australia.
Yeah.
It's crazy talk.
It's insane. And I don't know. Best business in the world. There's nothing else that I'm going to do with the rest of my life. This is it for me. But just because it's it for me doesn't mean it's it for you. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. Go find something else to do if does not sound appealing. But if it does sound appealing, go find somebody you can work with and go make stupid amounts of money. Like,
There you go.
yeah,
Can't say it any better than that. Like the video if you liked it. Don't dislike it. That's kind of strange. Comment below on what you'd like to hear us talk about. Subscribe to the channel because we make incremental improvements every day and every week, just like you need to make in your business. If you see us on shorts, hit the like button because it'll show the short to more people, and you'll get episodes or shorts like Nick's that had over 1,000 views in like 5.5 seconds.
that's so
Outstanding.
crazy to me. YouTube algorithm is nuts.
Shout out to Aaron who makes shorts. I don't make them. Shout out to Aaron who cuts out the part of the video where the dog gets out at the campground. And anytime that Nick's internet decides to operate like it's 1996. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.